My stepmother tried to hijack my wedding plans, but then my real mom showed up and exposed her lies. Let me back up and set the stage. My name is Carter, and in 6 months I'm set to marry the woman of my dreams, Harper. She's everything I've ever wanted. Compassionate, ambitious, funny, and honestly, way out of my league. We met in college and connected instantly, so reaching this milestone feels like the perfect conclusion to our story. But of course, nothing is ever that easy. Enter Vanessa, my stepmother. Vanessa married my father, Robert, when I was 14, about 3 years after my mom, Claire, left, or at least that's the story I was told. I hadn't seen or heard from my mom since, and Vanessa stepped in to take her place. Initially, she was kind and inviting, but over time her controlling tendencies began to surface. Everything in the house had to meet her standards, from meals to how we celebrated holidays. My dad, bless him, seemed oblivious, always defending her when I brought up her overstepping. Fast forward to now. Harper and I had been engaged for a few months, and though we were still in the early stages of planning, things were coming together. Harper had a clear vision, a small outdoor ceremony at a stunning garden venue she discovered with her best friend Avery, who's also her maid of honor. I was more than happy to support her vision, and with the help of her planner Savannah, we were making it happen. Then Vanessa decided to get involved. It started subtly. She offered to help streamline the guest list. Harper and I had kept it modest, about 100 people. But Vanessa insisted we should invite more of my dad's business associates and their families. It reflects on the family, Carter, she said, her manicured nails tapping the table. We can't exclude people important to Robert's career. Not wanting to stir the pot, I told her I'd think about it. Harper, however, wasn't as forgiving. Carter, this is our wedding, not your dad's networking event, she said later that night. She was right, of course, but I wasn't sure how to tell Vanessa no. Things escalated quickly from there. Vanessa showed up uninvited to one of our meetings with Savannah, carrying a binder, yes, a literal binder, full of wedding ideas. Harper and I were stunned as Vanessa flipped through pages of centerpiece designs, extravagant venue suggestions, and even a dress she thought Harper should wear. "This one is timeless," Vanessa said, sliding a glossy photo across the table. While it was beautiful, it was completely not Harper's style. Harper's polite demeanor held firm as she replied, "Thank you, Vanessa, but I've already chosen my dress." Her tone was calm but resolute, and I was proud of her. Vanessa, however, wasn't deterred. "You'll want something more classic," she said, dismissing Harper's statement. "Trends come and go, but elegance is forever." Savannah looked ready to hide under the table. After Vanessa left, Harper turned to me. "You need to talk to her," she said firmly. "This is our wedding, not hers." I promised I would, but the thought of confronting Vanessa filled me with dread. The breaking point came when Vanessa suggested changing our venue entirely. Harper and I had already booked and paid a deposit for the garden venue, which was perfect, but Vanessa called it too rustic and proposed moving it to a hotel ballroom she had connections with. She even brought it up during a family dinner right in front of my dad. "Harper, I don't want to overstep," Vanessa began, which was always code for her doing exactly that. "But don't you think a ballroom would be more elegant? I've already spoken to a friend who can get us a discount." Harper carefully placed her fork down. "We've already booked the venue," she said, her tone polite but firm, with fire in her eyes. Vanessa glanced at my dad for backup, and, predictably, he took her side. "Carter, you should at least consider it," my dad said. "Vanessa knows what she's talking about." I felt trapped. "We'll talk about it," I said, trying to diffuse the tension. Harper shot me a look that screamed, "We will absolutely be discussing this later." That night, Harper and I had our first real argument about the wedding. "Carter, you can't keep letting her take over," she said, pacing the living room. "This day is supposed to be about us, but every time she gets involved, it feels like she's planning her own wedding." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "I'll talk to her. I promise. It's just complicated. You're not marrying Vanessa, Carter. You're marrying me. Don't forget that." She was right, of course, but how do you stand up to someone who has spent over a decade making you feel like a child who doesn't know better? The next day, things took an unexpected turn. My younger sister, Zoe, approached me with something I wasn't prepared for. "I overheard Vanessa on the phone," she said in a low voice, like she was sharing classified information. "She was talking about the wedding and said something about needing to keep everything under control before it all falls apart." "What does that even mean?" I asked, frowning. "I don't know," Zoe admitted, but she sounded scared, like she's hiding something. It felt like a punch to the gut. What could Vanessa possibly be hiding? And why was she so desperate to control my wedding? At first, I thought maybe Zoe had misheard. Vanessa had always been controlling, but scared? Nervous? That didn't fit her usual behavior. She thrived on being the one in charge. She thrived on hearing my voice. And yet suddenly now I thought about it. The more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. If she really was keeping something secret, what could it be? And why would it have anything to do with my wedding? That week, Harper and I met up with Mason for drinks. Mason has been my best friend since high school, a dependable guy who always knows how to cut through the noise. As we caught him up on the latest drama with Vanessa, he simply shook his head. "She's always been a handful, man," Mason said, taking a sip of his beer. "But this is next-level stuff. Do you really think she's trying to sabotage your wedding?" "I don't know," I admitted. "It feels more like she's trying to make it hers. But Zoe overheard something strange. Vanessa might be hiding something." "What kind of something?" Mason asked, leaning forward. I shrugged. "I have no idea, but she's been acting way more intense than usual. It's like she's panicking." "People like her freak out when they start losing control," Harper chimed in, swirling her cocktail, "and I'm not about to let her ruin this." Mason leaned back in his chair. "Here's my take. You need to talk to your dad. If anyone knows what's going on with Vanessa, it's him." Harper scoffed. "Yeah, because Robert's been so helpful so far. All he ever does is defend her no matter what." Mason raised a hand to calm her down. "I'm not saying he'll take your side, but he might know something you don't. It's worth a shot." I nodded reluctantly. The thought of confronting my dad about Vanessa made my stomach churn, but Mason had a point. Ignoring this would only make things worse. The chance came sooner than I expected. The following evening, Dad asked me to come over and help with some house repairs. For once, Vanessa wasn't around, which felt like a rare stroke of luck. While we worked on fixing a squeaky cabinet door in the kitchen, I decided to bring it up. "Dad, can I ask you something?" I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "Of course," he replied, focused on tightening a hinge. "What's on your mind?" "It's about Vanessa," I began, hesitating. "She's been intense about the wedding, more than I expected." Dad looked up, his face a mix of confusion and mild annoyance. "She just wants it to be special for you. She's putting a lot of effort into this." "I get that," I said carefully, "but it feels like she's trying to take over. and Zoe overheard her saying something about keeping everything under control. It sounded off. He frowned slightly. Vanessa's under a lot of stress right now. She just wants everything to go smoothly. What kind of stress? I pressed. Is there something I don't know about? Dad hesitated, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. It's nothing you need to worry about, Carter. She's just juggling a lot of moving pieces. Dad, I said firmly, if something's going on, I have a right to know. This is my wedding. If there's a reason she's acting like this, I need to understand. He sighed and set down the screwdriver. Look, Vanessa has always been someone who likes things a certain way. She's a perfectionist. I don't think it's anything more than that. I wanted to believe him, but his tone wasn't convincing. He was hiding something, whether he realized it or not, and I was determined to figure out what. The next day, Harper and I had a meeting with Savannah to finalize some ceremony details. When we arrived, we were met with an unpleasant surprise. Vanessa was already there, sitting at the table with Savannah and flipping through a stack of floral arrangements. "What's going on?" Harper asked, her voice tense. "Oh, I thought I'd get a head start," Vanessa said breezily, as if she had every right to be there. "I wanted to make sure everything was on track." Harper shot me a look that practically screamed, "Do something!" I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Vanessa, we've got this handled," I said, keeping my tone as calm as possible. "You don't need to take care of this for us." "Nonsense," she replied with a wave of her hand. "I'm just helping. Besides, I've already made some excellent suggestions for the centerpieces." "Carter and I already chose the centerpieces," Harper said coldly. "We don't need you to change them." Vanessa's smile remained, but there was an unmistakable sharpness in her voice. "I just want to make sure everything is perfect. You'll thank me later." The tension in the room was unbearable. Savannah looked like she wanted to disappear, and Harper's frustration was nearing a boiling point. Honestly, I was just as frustrated. "Vanessa," I said, my patience wearing thin, "we appreciate your input, but this is our wedding. If we need help, we'll ask for it." Her expression hardened for a brief moment before she plastered on a fake smile. "Of course," she said, standing up. "I'll leave you to it." She walked out, but the damage was already done. Harper turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This has to stop, Carter. I mean it." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "I'll take care of it." But I didn't know how. Vanessa wasn't just interfering, she was bulldozing, and if I didn't find a way to stop her, Harper and I were at risk of losing control of our own wedding. That evening, Zoe came to me with more unsettling news. "I overheard Vanessa again," she said, her voice low. "She was talking to someone about making sure Claire doesn't show up." I froze. "What?" She said, "We can't let Claire ruin this." I don't know what she meant, but she sounded panicked. My mind raced. Claire, my biological mother, wasn't even invited to the wedding. Vanessa had ensured that Bezel had painted me as the villain who abandoned her family without a second thought. I had never questioned it before, but now I couldn't help but wonder. Was there more to the story? "I need to talk to Claire," I said, the words surprising even me. Zoe's eyes widened. "Do you even know how to find her?" "No," I admitted, "but I'll figure it out." For the first time in years, I felt a genuine need to hear my mom's side of the story. Vanessa's behavior wasn't adding up, and I had a feeling Claire might hold the answers I needed. I couldn't stop thinking about her. For most of my life, I had blindly accepted Vanessa's version of events. My mom left us, wanted nothing to do with me, and Vanessa stepped in as the maternal figure. But with Zoe's revelations and Vanessa's spiraling behavior, It felt like I had been living someone else's narrative. Maybe it was time to rewrite it. With Mason's help, I tracked down Claire. It wasn't easy. She had moved out of state years ago, and I wasn't even sure she'd want to hear from me. But when I finally got her number and made the call, the voice on the other end sounded cautious but hopeful. Claire? Claire's voice trembled as she said my name. "Yeah," I said, my throat tightening. "It's me." There was a pause, and I heard her take a deep breath. "I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "Well, I'm getting married," I said, unsure of how to break the tension. "And I guess I've realized there's a lot I don't know about what happened between you and Dad." There was another pause before she spoke. "I've always wanted to tell you, but Vanessa—" Her voice trailed off, hesitation clear. "Can we meet in person? There's so much I need to explain, and I don't want to do it over the phone." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between her town and mine. I didn't tell Harper or anyone else. I wasn't sure what I'd learn and didn't want to stir things up until I had some answers. When I walked into the coffee shop, I spotted Claire immediately. She looked older than I remembered, her blonde hair streaked with silver, but her smile hadn't changed. A wave of emotions hit me: relief, confusion, anger, but I pushed them aside as I sat down across from her. "Hi," I said, feeling awkward. "Hi," she replied, her smile faltering slightly. "You've grown up so much." Oh, for a moment we just sat there, the years between us creating a chasm that neither of us knew how to cross. Finally, she broke the silence. "I want you to know I never stopped thinking about you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I sent letters, birthday cards, even Christmas gifts, but I never got a reply." I frowned. I never received any of that. Her eyes filled with sadness. "I thought as much. Vanessa made it clear I wasn't welcome in your life. She told me that if I tried to reach out, she'd make sure your father fought for full custody and cut me out completely." I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "She told me you left us, that you didn't want to be part of my life." Claire shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "That's not true. I fought to stay in your life, but Vanessa convinced your dad I was unstable. She manipulated everything. I didn't have the resources to fight back. I thought that staying away would be better for you. I never wanted to hurt you, Carter." Her words hit me like a freight train. Years of resentment and abandonment suddenly felt like they'd been built on lies. Vanessa had taken my mother from me, and I hadn't even realized it. "What?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why would she do that?" "I can't say for sure," Claire admitted, "but I think she wanted control. Over you, over Robert, over everything. She's always cared more about appearances than anything else. And now, hearing how she's interfering in your wedding, I can't just sit back and let her hurt you too." Her words echoed in my head. Vanessa had already caused so much harm, and now she was trying to take control of my life with Harper. I wasn't going to let her. "I want you to come to the wedding," I said suddenly. Claire looked shocked. "Are you sure? Vanessa won't be happy about that." "I don't care," I said firmly. "You're my mom. You deserve to be there." She smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Carter. That means more to me than you'll ever know." The next day, I told Harper everything. She was stunned but supportive. "I always had a bad feeling about Vanessa," she admitted. "But this is on another level of manipulation." "She's not going to like it," I warned. "Bringing Claire to the wedding is going to cause a scene." "Then let her make a scene," Harper said, her eyes blazing. "If Vanessa can't handle the truth, that's her problem, not ours." It felt liberating to finally have clarity, to feel like I was reclaiming control of my own life. But I knew Vanessa wouldn't back down without a fight. Claire's arrival at the pre-wedding family dinner was, to say the least, explosive. Vanessa froze the instant Claire walked through the door. For a split second, she looked genuinely afraid, but she quickly replaced it with a scowl. "What is she doing here?" Vanessa demanded, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "She's here because I invited her," I said, stepping in front of Claire. "She's my mom, Vanessa. She has every right to be here." "She left you," Vanessa snapped, her face reddening. "She abandoned this family. She doesn't deserve—" "She didn't leave," I interrupted, my voice rising. "You pushed her out. You lied to me, Vanessa. You made me believe she didn't care when all she ever wanted was to be part of my life." The room fell silent. My dad, who had been standing off to the side, looked completely blindsided. "But what are you talking about?" he asked. "They're sent letters," I said, turning to him. "She tried to stay in touch, but Vanessa made sure I never saw them. She's been lying to us for years." My dad looked at Vanessa, his expression a mix of disbelief and anger. "Vanessa, is this true?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she seemed at a loss for how to twist the situation. Claire stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Robert, I never stopped loving Carter. I stayed away because Vanessa made it impossible for me to be part of his life. She threatened me, manipulated you, and I let it happen because I thought it was what was best for him. But I won't stay silent anymore." "No," I said, my tone steady. "You're the one who's been ruining everything, and I'm not going to let you anymore." Vanessa glared at me but didn't argue. For the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I wasn't about to back down. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The rest of us sat in stunned silence, the weight of Claire's revelations heavy in the air. My dad looked pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table as though he feared the world was collapsing. I don't know what to say," he finally muttered, turning to Claire. "If what you're saying is true, Vanessa lied to me for years." "She did," Claire said softly, "and I understand how hard that is to hear. But the truth is, I never stopped fighting for Carter. I just didn't have the power to stand up to her." I could see the wheels turning in my dad's head as he tried to make sense of everything. He wasn't a bad man, just someone who had been under Vanessa's spell for too long. I hoped this would finally open his eyes. Under the table, Harper reached for my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. When I looked at her, she smiled, a small but determined expression. I wasn't sure how I'd have gotten through this without her. The next day, I decided it was time to confront Vanessa directly. I found her pacing in the backyard, her arms crossed tightly. She didn't even look at me as I approached. "Vanessa, we need to talk," I said firmly. She spun around, her eyes blazing. "What's there to talk about? You've clearly chosen sides." "This isn't about sides," I shot back. "It's about the truth. You lied to me. You lied to Dad. You tried to erase my mom from my life. For what? To keep control? To make everything revolve around you?" Vanessa scoffed. "You don't know what you're talking about. Your mother abandoned you." "She didn't," I interrupted. "She sent letters, Vanessa. She tried to stay in touch, but you made sure I never saw them." Here's the rewritten version of your text, maintaining its original meaning and length while completely restructuring the sentences and replacing words for uniqueness. "Claire told me everything, and I believe her," I said. For a moment, Vanessa's expression wavered, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her mask of confidence. "She's just trying to turn you against me," Vanessa snapped. "Can't you see that? She's jealous of the life I built with your father. She's trying to tear our family apart." "No, Vanessa," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You destroyed our family the moment you started lying, and if you think I'm going to let you ruin my wedding too, you're dead wrong." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, as though she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed back into the house, slamming the door behind her. Watching her retreat was oddly satisfying. That afternoon, Harper and I met up with Mason and Avery to iron out some final details for the wedding. It felt good to shift focus to something positive for a change, but the tension with Vanessa hung over me like a storm cloud. "Do you think she'll try to pull something on the wedding day?" Harper asked as we reviewed the seating chart. "She might," I admitted. "But I'm ready for her this time. She's not going to ruin this for us." Avery's cheerful expression darkened. "And do you think she'll even show up after what happened at the dinner?" "She'll be there," Mason said with confidence. "Vanessa's too stubborn to stay away, but if she causes any trouble, I'll be ready to throw her out." Harper smiled at that. "Thanks, Mason. I might take you up on that." We spent the next hour finalizing plans, doing our best to keep the mood light despite everything that had happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that our wedding might actually go smoothly. That hope didn't last. The next morning, Harper called me in tears. "Carter, Vanessa tried to change the flower order," she said, her voice shaking. "She told the florist we wanted white roses instead of the dahlias we picked. I only found out because Savannah called to double-check." My fists clenched as rage bubbled inside me. "She did what?" "She's still trying to control everything," Harper said, her voice breaking. "Even after everything, she just won't stop." "That's it," I said, grabbing my car keys. "I'm going over there. This ends now." When I arrived at my dad's house, Vanessa was in the living room flipping through wedding magazines like nothing had happened. She barely glanced up as I stormed in. "Vanessa, we need to talk," I said, my tone icy. She let out a dramatic sigh and set the magazine down. "What now, Carter? Haven't you caused enough drama?" "I'm not the one causing drama. You are," I snapped. "Harper told me what you did with the florist. What is wrong with you?" Her eyes narrowed. "I was just trying to help. You'll thank me later when everything looks perfect." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You don't get to decide what's perfect. This is our wedding, not yours. And if you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't be there at all." Her face twisted into a scowl. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said firmly. "I'm done letting you control my life. If you want to be part of this family, then start acting like it. Otherwise, you can stay out of it." She glared at me, her eyes flashing with anger, but I didn't back down. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked away. "Fine," she muttered. "Have it your way." But I didn't trust her. Not for a second. That evening, I called Clea to check in. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Honestly, I'm exhausted," I admitted. "Vanessa's not backing down, and I feel like I'm constantly putting out fires. But at least I have you and Harper on my side." "You're stronger than you realize, Carter," she said gently. "Don't let her win. This is your day, and she doesn't get to take that from you." Her words gave me the strength I needed. I wasn't going to let Vanessa win, not this time. But deep down, I knew the real fight was still ahead. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, but I woke with a pit of dread in my stomach. Despite my efforts to keep Vanessa in check, I knew she wouldn't let the day pass without trying something. She was too proud, too stubborn, and too obsessed with control. But today wasn't about her. It was about Harper and me. And I was ready to fight for that. Mason picked me up early to head to the venue. "You ready for this?" he asked as we loaded my suit into his car. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, forcing a smile. "Let's just hope Vanessa doesn't do anything stupid." "She won't get the chance," Mason said confidently. "If she tries, I'll handle it." The garden venue looked stunning. Harper and Savannah had truly outdone themselves. Every detail was perfect, from the floral arch to the delicate string lights strung over the ceremony space. Guests began arriving, and I did my best to greet everyone and keep my nerves under control. Harper was tucked away in the bridal suite, getting ready with Avery and her mom. I wouldn't see her until she walked down the aisle, and the thought of seeing her in her dress was the one thing keeping me calm. Then Vanessa arrived. She swept into the venue as though she owned it, wearing an over-the-top, floor-length gown far too elaborate for a stepmother at a wedding. Her expression was tight, but she smiled and chatted with guests as if everything was fine. I kept my distance, but her presence loomed like a thundercloud. Claire arrived shortly after, looking graceful in a pale blue dress. She spotted me and approached, her warm smile reassuring. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I will be, as long as Vanessa behaves," I replied. Claire gave me a knowing look. "If she doesn't, we'll handle it together." The ceremony began without any issues. As the music started and Harper appeared at the end of the aisle, my heart swelled to the point I thought it might burst. She looked breathtaking, her dress flowing behind her like something out of a dream. For a brief moment, the world fell away. It was just the two of us, smiling at each other, ready to begin our life together. But the peace didn't last. As the officiant began his speech, I noticed Vanessa shifting uncomfortably in her seat. She kept glancing round, her face tight with an expression I couldn't quite read. Just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Vanessa rose to her feet. "I have something to say," she declared, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. The crowd gasped, and my stomach twisted. Harper's eyes widened in disbelief, and I could see the hurt and shock written all over her face. I stepped forward, my fists clenched tightly. "Vanessa, don't do this," I said, keeping my tone low but firm. "I have to," she replied, her voice unsteady but determined. "I can't stay quiet any longer." Before I could respond, Claire stood up. "You want to tell the truth, Vanessa," she said, her tone steady and cutting. "Fine, let's tell everyone the truth." She held out her hand and said the novel version of the word lit between us. "Come." Vanessa froze, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't about you, Claire," she hissed. "Oh, it absolutely is," Claire replied, stepping forward. "For years, you've manipulated this family, lied to Carter and Robert, and tried to control everything around you. And now, on his wedding day, you're trying to ruin one of the happiest moments of his life." The crowd fell silent, every eye fixed on the two women. Vanessa's face flushed red, and I could see the panic starting to creep into her expression. "That's not true," Vanessa stammered, her voice trembling. "I've done everything for this family. I've always put them first." No, Claire said, her voice rising. You put yourself first. You lied to Robert about me, made Carter believe I abandoned him, and now you're trying to destroy his marriage because you can't stand losing control. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, but before she could get a word out, my dad stood up. Vanessa, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. Is this true? For a moment she just stared at him, her face pale. Then, as though the weight of it all finally hit her, she slumped, her shoulders drooping as she looked away. I did what I thought was best, she muttered. I was trying to protect this family. Protect us? I said, my voice shaking with anger. You didn't protect us, Vanessa. You tore us apart, and now you're trying to do it again? Harper stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. This is our day, Vanessa, not yours. If you can't support us, then you need to leave. The crowd murmured in agreement, and I could see the embarrassment and defeat etched on Vanessa's face. She looked at me, then at my dad, as though searching for someone to defend her, but no one did. Finally, she turned and walked away, disappearing down the aisle without another word. The tension in the air lifted like the calm after a storm. Relief washed over me in waves. The rest of the ceremony unfolded perfectly. Harper and I exchanged vows, and as we sealed it with a kiss, the crowd erupted in cheers. For the first time in weeks, everything felt exactly as it should. At the reception, Claire pulled me aside. "I'm so proud of you, Carter," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "You stood up for yourself and for Harper. That's what matters." "Thanks, Mom," I said, the word feeling natural and right. "I couldn't have done it without you." Harper joined us, slipping her hand into mine. "Here's to a fresh start," she said, raising her glass. "To family," I said with a smile, glancing at Claire and Harper. "The one we choose and the one we fight for." The rest of the night was a joyful blur of laughter, dancing, and pure happiness. Vanessa might have tried to ruin everything, but in the end, all she did was make us stronger. As Harper and I drove off into the night, ready to begin our honeymoon and the next chapter of our lives, I felt nothing but gratitude for the people who stood by us and for finding the strength to finally stand up for myself.